Truth and stories gotta collide. Alibis get swept aside. I got proof that can't be denied. The data don't lie, people do. Waves crashing, secrets in the tide. Facts and numbers side by side. Through the chaos I will abide. The data don't lie, people do. Look at the records, feel the vibe. Digits and bytes come alive. I stand tall with nothing to hide. The data don't lie, people do. Friends may twist and tongues may tie. Plausible tales shape the sky. In the end you can verify. The data don't lie, people do. It's in the matrix beyond the eye. Hard truth that's flying by. Evidence you can't defy. The data don't lie, people do. Look at the records, feel the vibe. Digits and bytes come alive. I stand tall with nothing to hide. The data don't lie, people do. Look at the records, feel the vibe. Digits and bytes come alive. I stand tall with nothing to hide. The data don't lie, people do.
All right, guys. Hello, everyone. We are all here. Oh,
Hi.
Hey,
Thanks for
hi.
having us.
let's do that. All right, Ellie.
Babe, you look gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Oy.
As
Beautiful.
always.
There's no touch up my appearance option on the stream you use, so I feel
You need
like,
a touch up your appearance option like you need a hole in the head. Like so. You don't need it, girl. I'll tell you that. She doesn't believe me.
There was one because I would be, touching up my teeth if I could and be on camera with you. Anyway, how are we all today?
Excellent. Happy Friday. Happy Friday.
It's actually Saturday here, but
Well,
I
happy
guess-
Saturday to you, Aussie.
and
I am
to all your
technically-
Australian listeners.
Yeah.
Right. I am technically still in Friday because I'm on your clock at the moment. So all my guests this week are on your clock.
I like it. I like it. Got a bunch of Americans coming on.
We do. We have a huge American audience and Canadian audience,
Love
and a
it.
much smaller Australian audience. But we do have the Aussies out there. They're actually all at work. So,
Right.
I find it. Can I ask you a question before you start asking me questions?
absolutely, please do.
I think so. I'm always fascinated that other countries are kind of fascinated in kind of American jurisprudence. Like, what's the draw? Is it because it's like it's cool because you have the ability to kind of watch our trials at stream, but it doesn't go both ways. Like, I've never been able to watch like an Australian trial or a British trial, and I'd love to because I as a lawyer, I'm always super interested in like how the other systems work because they're all different. They
Right.
all have different aspects, and I'd love to watch. So why? Because we have a lot of listeners from Australia, Ireland, Scotland, a lot of English speaking countries over on the other side of the pond. Like, what's kind of the draw for you?
Well, we're a Westminster system here, but some of it's built the same way. Yours is like case law kind of overrides, our archaic Westminster law.
Mhm.
And that's been happening since I guess the early 1900s. We became a federation and we started building our own law here for Australia, but it is built on the Westminster system. And the reason that we cover your cases is because we're not allowed to.
Really?
Yeah, so that
That's an excellent answer.
you will know you will have heard of the mushroom murder trials, which just recently concluded with a guilty verdict. Several bloggers and also mainstream media were threatened with being thrown in jail because they covered things about the case that they don't want us talking about. So
Wow.
when the court says not allowed to talk about it, you're not allowed to talk about it.
Wow. That's stunning to me. I did not know that. That
Right.
is so freedom of speech. I mean, in terms of kind of you're limited when it comes to
Right.
the criminal justice system. That's wild. Like, why do they like to try their cases in the dark? It sounds like. I mean, like the
Yeah.
whole
Is it do
purpose
they
of us
claim
being
that helps keep the process more fair? Is there like a logical
I
reason for
think
it?
so. That, like, there's a simple version which I say we're tighter than China, like FOIA, everything tighter than China here. But
really
at the
wow.
same time, when you look into like the history of it, Andrea and I were actually going to have like a conversation about this way back, but then she got real busy. But whether or not we make it public. Like, we don't televise the trials here like you guys do. So that's probably
Right,
one draw that you have that, makes ours pretty boring.
right.
But even the people that go in and take notes about the trial, because we do have a public gallery, and that's what that's designed to do, is create that openness. When we talk about open justice, that's what that is. It's go to the gallery, take the notes, and if the judge says you're not allowed to do anything with those notes, then you're not allowed to do it.
Wow.
But I do think it did derive from the early days of media, where people were being tried in the media, and there were a lot of impacts that brought us to this point. The dingo ate my baby story, for example, completely
Which was made
destroyed.
famous in the States by that, of course, that
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld episode. A dingo ate my baby. Yeah, so it's like Elaine made that phrase a catchphrase in the US. I never knew where it originated from. I mean, obviously I knew from the dingo itself, but I didn't know that it was an actual case.
I mean,
It was an actual case, Lindy Chamberlain. So they went camping at Ayers Rock, and the dingoes are actually quite aggressive, and especially when you have tourists feeding them and they know that that's the food source, they'll come back to that food source. Then
Yeah.
they're wild animals, so they get aggressive. Even the possums get aggressive
Wow.
if you're feeding them regularly, and the kangaroos as well. So it
so
was a
did
change of how we behave as humans in the wild. Like, if we're interacting with wild animals, we don't feed them anymore, not allowed to feed them anymore, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
did the dingo really eat her baby?
the dingo really did eat her baby. Yes.
Oh
Wow.
no,
But they
that's
brought her to
horrible.
trial on it because the government didn't believe that she was telling the truth about the dingo. Did it
Well,
go to trial?
it was a big turning point for us, and we're probably going to leapfrog straight through to one of the points I put sort of last. But it was a turning point for us on how we interrogate, how we set up, how we deal with wrongful convictions. So she was kind of one of the pillars of us changing how we deal with how the statistics, I guess, on wrongful convictions. We had a fairly high batting average of wrongful convictions here, and we decided to deal with it. Whereas I think you guys are still struggling with that.
We
How to
are indeed.
But one of the things that we changed was the way the police behave in investigations. So we don't use the read technique here, for example, is the probably the main factor. That on its own has reduced our wrongful convictions by, I can't even remember how many percent, probably 20%.
Wow.
We use a technique now called PEACE. It's PEACE, and it stands for, if I remember, P for planning and preparation, E for engage and explain, A for account, clarification and challenge, C for closure, and E for evaluation. So there's none of this stick them in a corner and trying to prize a confession out of them.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's more like sit them in a chair, get them talking, and record it.
Yeah, we watch a lot of BritBox, so I've watched a lot of kind of their crime shows, and
Yeah, they
through
use
that, I realized that they used a very different technique in terms of kind of their questioning. And when I saw your question, um, uh, in like your question was, do you like read versus peace? I mean, it's a pretty simple answer, peace all day, because it's like it strips away the concept of them lying in order to, because read is for one purpose and one purpose alone, and that's to extract confessions.
correct.
The peace technique is not, you know, they'll allow them to give a full narrative uninterrupted. They'll then confront them gently with inconsistencies in the story, and
Yeah,
they'll kind of let them hang themselves, as opposed to, browbeating the hell out of them, lying to them, telling them things that are and our Supreme Court has said that law enforcement can lie in those, I mean, they can't lie about certain things, but they can certainly lie about evidence that they claim to have that they don't really have, which is a powerful tool,
it
and,
is.
I mean, you can get somebody who's like, oh my God, like I didn't do this shit, but they're saying we have all this evidence, and then you're like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? It's like at first you don't believe it, and if you don't know that they can lie to you, like actively, and they'll say, we're not lying, man. Like we'll bring it in here if you want to see, you want to see it, and people are like the
I
normal
think there needs to
citizen.
be a happy medium of it, though. I can see being able to, like, lie in, like, a lightweight, easy, "I'm gonna see if this guy, gives when I tell him we've got an eyewitness," but, like, once it turns into, like, badgering, harassing to the point where, it turns into a full read technique, um, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean,
Then you can't trust the outcome, but,
if they
if
switched
you wanna catch
their
the bad guys, you gotta sometimes be a little tough with them. Can't be like, "Well, sir,
I mean,
interestingly,
can you
let's
argue
tell us
with
what
a
you did wrong."
20% reduction in wrongful convictions, though?
Yeah, I don't know, that's
That's a
valid.
pretty big number. That's a
Well, I'm
pretty
sure their
big
peace
number.
technique is not like hand holding, I'm sure they're still
no,
coming at
I was
people.
just gonna say this, they're allowed to lie to you still, like, they can lie to you and, still get away with that, but, on the gaslighting, that's right, Miss Jones. But yeah, I'd the I can see, yeah, I'm kind of with Ali on this. There's got to be a balance, and there's also, as Bob says, we can't argue with a 20% reduction in. I don't know that it's 20% exactly, but it's somewhere in that area. That
I mean,
that
that's a huge amount. If it's even somewhere in that
Yeah,
area, it's a
if it's
huge
like
amount.
15 to 20%, that's a massive amount of innocent people that aren't going to prison.
Right.
I mean, that's a huge number. It's a huge number. It's just, I mean, if you think of it in terms of just out of 10 people, two that would have been otherwise convicted aren't spending their life or, whatever period of time in prison. It's a pretty big number, and it's pretty convincing to me in terms of techniques that are used. I mean, the read technique, the problem with techniques like that is, it depends on whose hands it's in, right? Like a lot of American cops are just kind of like that dude you hated in high school, like kind of the hard on bully kind of douchey guy that like now has a badge and a gun and a whole bunch of power, and they act that way, and that's not to say that all cops are like that, and like I make it clear on our show all the time, I love good cops, I love them. I
If you
mean,
can
we
find
need
them.
we need good
Sorry.
police. There's plenty of good cops
I
out
know,
there,
I'm just saying.
but there's the bad ones really do spoil the bunch. If you get, like, you look at Karen's case, I mean, I'm sure that there are a few cops in Canton that don't suck and aren't total douchebags. You know what I mean? But that entire police department was tainted because of the guys that were not good people, and not good people turns into not good cops, and not good cops turns into wrongful convictions. I mean, that's
Yep,
just the way it is. So
indeed, indeed, it is. So, for those who actually don't know you guys, and what you cover, Bob, I just thought maybe you'd like to tell the audience about the John Wayne Gacy case. They might be more familiar with the Netflix series on that.
Yeah.
So they know who you are. And then we'll go on to Ali. You're still in practice, aren't you, Ali?
I am.
Yep. So I thought maybe we could start there and then sort of move through our little list. I put a list up for everyone so we don't get lost in translation today.
Sure. So basically, kind of my father's crowning achievement. He's a defense attorney as well, and he was a public defender for many years. I think about 15 years. And when he kind of went out and hung his shingle and went into private practice, this huge case in the Chicagoland area broke, which was this John Wayne Gacy case. And kind of the way that the story goes is that my dad was probably into private practice for about 6 months. My parents had divorced. I think I was living in Colorado at the time. And this story breaks on the 10 o'clock news, and they're showing a bunch of cops coming out of this house in this suburb of Chicago, unincorporated Norridge or Norwood Park. And, they're saying, yeah, police are now pulling out bodies from this house. And immediately, like, you're like, what? Like, what are they doing? And so you're kind of like locked in. And on that first night, the first time that they started pulling the bodies out after, and this was the second search of the house, the first time they hadn't found anything, and then they got a second warrant to go in 10 days later. So that happens. They go right down to the crawl space, and they start unearthing victims' bodies, and they're all skeletal at that point. I think they got like 3 out of the crawl space that first night. And during that, this little short lawyer comes on who says that he's John Wayne Gacy's lawyer. My dad's like, and I'm sitting in so I had traveled to Illinois for Christmas vacation. We get
Because his parents were divorced.
Yeah, my parents were split. So I come back. I'm with my dad. We're in his apartment. It's me and my dad and my uncle, my father's brother. And this little short attorney comes on. My dad's like, holy shit, I know that guy. That's Sam Amaranti. And my dad gets up and he starts pacing. He's like, oh my God. He's like, should I reach out to Sam to see if he needs help on this case? And at this point in time, we have no idea that there's going to be 33 victims, right? So like the search for the bodies and the victims went on for months. Literally, they destroyed the whole house. They had to rip up the floor because the space in the crawl space, you weren't able to stand. You had like 18 inches, like literally to operate down there. So it was like a nightmare scenario. So my dad, he sends, this is obviously way before emails and faxes.
I just want to chime in real quick, which begs the question when Bob's talking about these 18 inches, how in the hell this old, heavy set, not very fit man was able to alone get down there and hide all the bodies, which is why Bob and people he's working with are continuing to look for more bodies and think Gacy did not act alone. But go on. Sorry, babe.
True. It's true. So so my dad says, should I send him a Western Union? And so I've like taken the blame for him becoming Gacy's lawyer for like whatever it's been 40 years now. Cause I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm 10, I'm like, oh, my dad will be on TV. I'm like, neat. It's like, I don't know what the ramifications, I don't know anything about what I'm watching really, and he sends the Western Union to Sam Amaranti, and Sam gets back to him within minutes of getting that. And Sam's like, I definitely need help. Yeah. Do you want to come on board? First, my dad, like, he kind of freaks out a little bit. And my dad was a public defender in Cook County, which is where Chicago is situated. And in that particular county, you see the worst of the worst. It's a very big city. There's a lot of violent crime. My dad was the head of the felony division. So my dad was a very, very seasoned criminal defense trial lawyer. Probably more so than Sam at that point. And, so my dad, but my dad at first blush is like, it's like, you know what? It's like, I got a bunch of things going on. It's like, I don't think I could do it. And he hangs up the phone. starts ruminating about it for like 15, 20 minutes, picks the phone back up and says, yeah, I'll do it. So from that point forward, he became co-counsel with Amaranti on that case. And if you don't know anything about John Wayne Gacy was active, a serial killer, an American serial killer, active in the Chicagoland area from what we believe is 1972 to 1978. He had a 6-year reign of terror. During that period of time, he has 33 known victims. As Allison said, we happen to believe that there's additional victims that have not been uncovered, that were not buried on the property or thrown in the Des Plaines River. And so, as you can imagine, that's that question that most people want to ask defense attorneys, like, how do you defend somebody like that, right? It's always the first thing that people ask.
Sure.
And, and it's like the answer's simple. One, well, the Constitution demands it. Every single, like, you don't get to pick and choose who the Constitution applies to. Every single citizen of the United States has a right to a fair trial. They have a right to confront their accusers. They have a right to cross-examine witnesses. Those are all things that
And
every
to a fair
single
process, which is
into a
what
fair
the defense
process.
attorney's doing.
Right. And so as we, kind of like progress through that case, it becomes obvious very quickly, because Gacy, once he's in custody, gives 5 confessions of sorts on 5 different occasions when they come in and talk to him. He certainly doesn't say that he killed 33 kids, but he admits to 5 of the killings, or 6. And at that point, it becomes obvious to my father that the only defense for this guy is the insanity defense. And so, and the argument there was that he had a compulsion, that he was compelled to do these things, that he couldn't control his mind in a way that he could stop, because there's a couple of different, like, Illinois was kind of a hybrid between McNaughton and, where you don't know right from wrong. You don't have the ability to tell right from wrong. Like, Gacy clearly knew right from wrong. He was hiding the bodies. There was elements of planning and things like that, where it makes it an awful tough sell to convince 33 or 12 people that somebody who killed 33 people should be found not guilty by reason of insanity. That's a really, 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 like,
Right.
very tall mountain
And
to climb.
you used to be able to argue that someone had a mental illness, that they had a compulsion that they could not control. That's no longer an option in most states. Some states, I
Right.
think there's some version of it still, but that was the
Yeah,
version they were going for.
right.
And
In
then Bob's
79,
dad left him his tapes of his interviews with Gacy during the trial. Bob pitched that to Berlinger, and then it didn't work out, but Berlinger went forward and did the Gacy tapes with other tapes, and didn't tell the full story.
It was my
But, yeah.
pitch. Well, and the thing with Joe is that he put it out there as if they were the trial attorney's tapes, because my
It
dad,
said trial. It said tapes during trial or something. It said that in the writing at the start of the series, but which
Right.
it wasn't. It wasn't. There was no female lawyer during the trial. That was the appellate lawyer's
yeah,
tape.
who was his very last attorney. So I sat there for.
She's got a question though, babe.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. That's okay. You can keep going. I'll rack my questions up.
Oh, okay. So and you all should listen to my first season of my podcast, which is the Defense Diaries podcast.
The Gacy
My
tapes.
first season is called the Gacy tape. So for my 21st birthday, my father gave me all his taped interviews with John Wayne Gacy, prepping him for trial, with the insanity defense, in the back of my father's mind. So everything that you're hearing is my father going back and forth with Gacy, trying to get him to basically tell him what happened, because with an insanity defense, you're not claiming that you didn't do the crime. By operation of law, you've admitted that you've done the crimes, but you're saying that my mind didn't allow me to conform to the law. So
Yep.
They're fascinating. I sat on them for 35 years. I didn't know what to do with them. And then finally I decided, I first tried to license the sound to Berlinger, because after the Bundy tapes dropped, like that night, I emailed Joe and I'm like, hey, just want to let you know, I've got some tapes that I think you might be interested in. And so then that started 9 months of negotiations. I couldn't work it out, like Allison said. I moved on, which was a blessing in disguise because that pushed me into doing the podcast, which I had been contemplating for a couple of years at that point. And so I do this incredibly deep dive into that case. I intertwine the sound from the tapes into the long running narrative. I didn't want to focus on Gacy. Everybody's heard the Gacy story. No one needs to know all his bullshit about growing up and in Iowa and the arrest and all that shit. I wanted to focus on the victims who I knew nothing about, nothing. And I knew everything about the case. 33 young men and boys, and I knew nothing about them other than Rob Peast, his last victim. So I made that a focus, and I wanted to focus on the investigation, the arrest, and the trial, which is exactly what I did. And it was an incredible experience in a lot of different ways. It was very cathartic for me. It was just one of those experiences where I didn't realize that, like, Gacy had been a weird part of my life for 40 years. You know, I'm an old guy at this point, and I didn't really realize until I like ended that series, which was 36 episodes. It was really 33
but
with
3 parts.
right, a 3-part final. But I'm very, very proud of the work. You know, I was able to accomplish everything I wanted to in terms of really trying to focus on the victims. That's Berlinger's thing. That's not my thing. That was my pitch to Berlinger, and he ran with that.
So
So
ours is under Defense Diaries, the Gacy tapes. That's
yeah, that's a
the first season of-
3-parter. Mine is, like I said, 33 plus 3 episodes. 33 was in memorial of the victims. You know, and I really wanted to end it on 33 because it was important to me. But at any rate, I'm like, you know, I went and talked to all the old cops and interviewed them. I had the lead prosecutor performed his entire closing argument, which had the hairs on my arm standing up. My father performed his, because I had the transcripts from the trial. My father performed his opening statement, which is brilliant. If you ever want to have an understanding of the insanity defense in terms of what it was at that time, my father's opening statement is unbelievable. It's just incredible. You know, and it was just an amazing experience, and we uncovered just an unbelievable story, which is how they really got Gacy, what they did to get Gacy, and it's mind-blowing. And I don't want to give anybody a spoiler, but that in and of itself is worth the listen. And it came directly from the cops, and I was able to vet it. And it's an incredible story in terms of how they got Gacy. It's just,
So if they want to, if the audience wants to hear your version of it, it's on Defense Diaries, the YouTube channel.
No,
podcast.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we originally we brought all the straight up podcast, like audio only podcast episodes over to YouTube, but like we kept hearing that because there's no video, it was driving our numbers down because people would click on it thinking they were going to be watching a video because YouTube is a visual thing. And then when they found that they're only getting sound, they'd stop listening like 60 seconds in. So we pulled them off, or we privated them. So no, anywhere you get podcasts, if you listen to podcasts, we're on Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast. Audible, everywhere you listen to them. And it's great to listen to if you're walking your dog, if you're exercising, you're doing chores, you're going to sleep at night. It's probably not the best if you're going to sleep, because
Bob's voice, his podcast voice, is amazing, and sometimes I would put it on when I was tired to go to sleep listening to, because he could read bedtime stories. It would be, you know, so it is good to listen to at night, but not good to listen to at night because you can't. It's the type of podcast you actually need to pay attention to.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot. And that was kind of where I developed this concept. Like when I left practicing law and I decided I was going to do this, that I wanted to really educate people on the legal system and how it works. Because like everybody who loves true crime, you watch it and sometimes you don't necessarily understand what they're talking about, especially when it gets to the trial level, you know, and there's just terms of art and there's legalese that's used, and they're talking about motions to suppress, and there's terms that are used. So I spend a lot of time, and I called it, it's your favorite time. It's my favorite time. It's in whatever I was going to explain, it's motion to suppress time. And then I would kind of give like a law school type dissertation, but try to make it entertaining to educate people on what the certain aspects of the law were that lay people may not understand. And the hope was that that would really help people enhance their enjoyment of true crime, this thing that we all kind of love for whatever reason. So yeah, it's a pretty good podcast. I'm pretty proud of it. You know, so I recommend everybody give it a listen.
Nice. So, some things that Bob actually mentioned, Ali, I could probably just boot over to you. As far as the questions, I was racking up my brain. If you have a client that says they're guilty, how do you go about representing that client? Like, there must be a fine line between you're literally lying to the court because you know your client's guilty and being honest with the court. There's going to be this fine line that you're tight roping, right?
Well, so if a client tells you that they're guilty, you can't put them on to say that they didn't commit the crime. You can't put on you can't put on like evidence to the contrary. Most of the time, what you're doing as a defense attorney is trying to, especially if they're guilty, is trying to negotiate a plea that is commiserate with the actual offense. So often, the state, charges way overcharges, way overcharges. Like if you take Karen Reed, for example, and you think of what they thought in the beginning, before you know what you know now, and you think, you know what, maybe this woman accidentally hit her boyfriend because she was drunk and she didn't see him. But then they turn around and charge, intentional murder, saying
Yeah.
she's angry at him and she, ran him down. There is a lot of that. Like we had a man that was charged with attempted murder who actually did shoot a weapon in the direction of his wife, and we considered it a win when the jury found not guilty on
Attempted murder.
attempted murder. I'm seriously brain fog on attempted murder, but they found him guilty of assault with a deadly weapon or um
No,
you
it
know
was aggravated discharge of a
discharge of
firearm.
a firearm, right? Aggravated
Yeah.
discharge of a firearm. So there's a lot of that. So, and sometimes if it's a lot of mitigation where you're arguing somebody's got mental health issues and that should reduce their sentence, they should be, they should have a lesser sentence. They should be required to do some medical treatment. They should be put on some sort of diversion program, either the mental health court, the drug court, things like that. But it's not like, somebody says you can know somebody's guilty and still go to trial, because if they want to go to trial, you go to trial. And then all you do is, cross-examine their witnesses and argue that the state hasn't presented enough evidence to prove their case. That's not me, necessarily saying that he didn't do it. It's saying that the state hasn't proved their case. But no, if your client tells you that they're guilty, it would be a violation of our ethical obligations to put him on the stand and say he hasn't done it,
Right.
that he didn't do it. And the argument would be, that the state didn't prove their case.
And I mean, most cases aren't murder. You know what I mean? It's like when you kind of like you're involved in just kind of entrenched in the true crime world, and you kind of start to think that all the cases are murder. The reality is that the
Very
vast
few,
majority
right.
of cases are not murder. A vast majority of cases don't go to trial. Most cases are pled out. It's in the in the high 80s, low 90s. I mean, if you're talking about federal cases, they almost all plead out because the feds are very, very diligent about building their cases. They don't go with bullshit cases. And, they really force your hand, and the sentencing guidelines are so strict that it really gives you a lot of motivation as a defendant to plead out, because, you lose a lot of points and you're going to get hammered in terms of a sentence if you decide to take it to trial. And there's not really much of a chance you're going to win. So that really kind of, forces your hand to really say, all right, well, let's try to work out this plea agreement. Like Allison in her federal cases, like her sentencing memos in federal cases are like the main litigation of the case. That's where she's really doing most of her work. And, those cases just plead out. But, so yeah, that's kind of the thing with, people
It's
just think
interesting.
everything's murder, and it's just not that way. Most of our work, like Ali said, is we're trying to make sure that the punishment fits the crime, that they're not overcharging, and
Yeah.
making sure that our clients know what their rights are, making sure the government's doing their job properly and not skirting the law, not violating people's constitutional rights. Because if defense attorneys aren't here in the United States, and the cops are allowed to go rogue and we don't call them on it, then
Yeah.
we're living in a very different country. We're living in a country that we wouldn't want to, they're kicking your doors in, they're searching whenever the hell you want. It's like a fascist country. So, and defense attorneys are the ones who do it. Like we have the Michael Walsh case,
Right.
which we just got opinions today, which I was very, very nervous. The same shithead cops that were handling Karen's case, the Proctors and, the Fannings and all those guys had their hands all over this horrific, crime that there appears to have happened to Anna Walsh, and wherein it looks like that her husband killed her and disposed of her body in a gruesome type of way. And there was a chance that all of that was going to get tossed because they filed a motion to suppress, saying that Proctor and the boys went beyond what they were allowed to in terms of searching his devices. But fortunately, and Ali and I were talking about when we covered that, in that particular circumstance, and I didn't get to read the whole opinion and memorandum in order. But she clearly found somewhere to hang her hat, the judge did in that case, to where she didn't have to suppress it, because that whole case would have gone away and that potential monster would have walked, and there would have been a lot of pissed off people in Massachusetts, and the United States had that happened, and in that situation, you're not pointing your finger, blaming the defense attorney. You're blaming the cops who violated the law. Like,
Point
that's
the
the one
finger
thing
where
we're
it
always
belongs.
trying to teach people, it's like point the finger at the right people,
That's right.
which we're making headway. And Karen Reed really, really helped people understand what's going on and how much you have to fight, how much money you have to raise in order to beat charges in this country. Like when the government has their sights set on you and they have all the resources and power, it is hard to be the defendant, and it's hard to win a case. You saw firsthand, they had to try her 2 times. Karen had to get $1 million in donations in order to be able to hire the best experts that they could, and get all these powerful lawyers on, who by the second trial basically did it pro bono. So it's like, it's tough. It's tough.
It is. It is. So I did a little deep dive about what drives the true crime genre. Why is it always murder, and why that is what drives the genre? Why people tune into the true crime genre? And I found it very interesting that it's about on a human level dealing with our own vulnerability as a person, as a human, and how quickly and easily life can be snuffed out. A lot of it's to do with coping strategies, particularly if you live in America, I guess, or in a city in any country, I guess, where the crime is higher and those types of crimes are higher. These are about humans dealing with their vulnerabilities, how they might cope, how they can keep themselves safe. So I found that all very, very interesting. Like this, no real there's no real we were talking just before about the YouTube algorithm. There's no real algorithm that you can say this case is going to blow up as big as any other case.
Right.
But I think that the Karen Reed case had all of those right ingredients. Like any one of us could have been her. Most of us wouldn't have the financial resources that she had at her disposal. Most of us would never find a lawyer who was prepared to do pro bono. There's all of these things that where she could have been any one of us. So I think that's what the audience was keen with the Karen Reed case.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, me too. And I think there's also, we just have this kind of, like, we love the human condition and we love watching it in full display. I talk about that all the time. And it's like in these cases that we're watching, it's like the worst of the worst in terms of people at their lowest point. And we want to try to understand why a lot of times. And we are very unfulfilled most of the times in the answers that we get,
Case in point,
and
Koberger.
And it's like, it's like we can say that people are trying to cope, but like I have zero interest in looking into Koberger's, like, the police reports. It's like I don't, maybe that's because Allie and I have tried some pretty horrible cases in our life, and I have zero interest in reading any of the police reports. I mean, like, there's folks out there that, despite the fact that this guy stood up in a court of law and admitted guilt to all four of the homicides, they're still trying to say that the guy's innocent and he was railroaded. I'm like, nah, man. I'm like, he ain't that guy, I'm like,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
guy, you know what I mean? And it's
Well,
like,
there's a few cases like that, and that actually brings me to my next point. I woke up this morning listening to, oh, his name just fell out of my head. Listening to, why is that name not there?
was
Ali.
it us? Was it us?
No.
Oh,
I'm just trying to think of his name. It'll come to me in a second. When I'm finished the sentence, it'll go bing. But anyway, he's talking about the Stephen Avery case with a investigative journalist.
mhm.
There's a part two to that story that's come out. I think it's on Netflix, maybe. And one of the things that so they got to the end of the conversation. So this particular journalist he was speaking with didn't necessarily believe that Stephen Avery is guilty or did the
Mhm.
crime. And so the next question that was asked was, well, who do you think did the crime? And this brings me to uh, a, a point that I've been covering a lot on my channel over the years, like long before Karen Reid trial came along. If we think that Stephen Avery was railroaded, and then we go, well, we think this person might have done it, then aren't we just moving the railroad to someone else and doing it by trial by media sort of thing? So how do we avoid doing that as creators? Does that ever sort of become a focus for you guys when you're talking about cases?
I mean, you
Yeah.
make a good point. I mean, there hasn't, we've thrown out like possible scenarios in Karen Reid, but never, like obviously Aiden Turtle Boy, he's firmly believes that his investigation and what he has learned points to identify these people did it, and we try, not to take that next step when we obviously don't know who did it. But even in that trial, we tossed around, possible scenarios. But I think that all creators absolutely have a duty to not just be spreading pure speculation, and their theories, but there's got to be a balance between being able to talk about what someone thinks is a possibility, and not creating, um, an entire bulldozer over somebody. So I don't know. What do you think, babe?
Well, I mean, like, so Karen, like, leading up to that, because basically what we do on our channel, if you follow our channel, is because we're both lawyers and because we both are criminal defense attorneys specifically, we read all the documents and we explain to the people that are watching along with us what it means. We translate it and we give our thoughts on it. We talk about whether or not we think it's going to be a successful argument, things of that nature. We talk about the cases that are cited and the precedent that exists out there. And Allie's excellent in terms of breaking down, the potential for success in a particular motion, and in ways that she can see that happening, and the likelihood that it won't, and it's because of this. And so we stick to the documents, like, until trial, and because we always say you can't know anything until trial. Like, you can form opinions. We all form opinions, initial opinions on cases based on what we're hearing in the media, based on, like, for instance, in our channel, when we're reading pleadings, you can form an initial opinion, but we're always guarding people against forming a final opinion until the evidence is vetted at trial, because both sides just have theories. Prosecutors weren't there when the crime was committed, the defense wasn't there when the crime was committed, the cops weren't there when the crime was committed. So everybody's putting forth a theory depending on which side it is, and that's all it is. And so
Right.
you have to listen, you have to wait and listen to the evidence get vetted, and then judge for yourself. I mean, we as the public, when we have a trial that's streamed, we're allowed to pretend to be sitting in that jury box. and we're hearing the evidence, we're seeing the witnesses testify, and we can come to our own conclusions. And at that point, it's fine to come to a final conclusion. So like with Karen Reed, like I just would not say whether or not I thought she was factually innocent or not until after the first trial. And then when I saw the evidence, which for me in Karen's case, it begins and ends with John's injuries or lack thereof. Like to me, that was the most compelling evidence that his body did not in any way, shape, or form show any indication that he was struck by a 6,000-pound vehicle. Like if it was his arm would have been mush. His bones would have been broken. It would have been bruised to all hell.
Oh,
And like
the
you don't have
evidence
any of that.
didn't
Yeah,
match. Didn't match.
yeah, right. So for me, everything else beyond that, and on my channel, I was begging for Yannetti and Jackson and then Alessi to try that case exactly how they tried it. Forget
Yeah.
all of the, I'm like, because whether or not those folks did something to John in that house, which is a distinct possibility, the fact of the matter is, had they arrested any of those people with the investigation as it was, it would have been the same result that Karen had gotten because they just didn't have enough evidence against them. And so it would have been the same result. So I'm like, in terms of doing your job and walking Karen out of that courtroom, focus on the powerful aspects of the case, which is that John wasn't hit by the vehicle. Stick
Right.
with the science. And that's exactly what they did. And they got the result that was needed. So, but for other cases, like, and I know you're a little tough on me on my Richard Allen side of it, but
Absolutely not.
which is fair.
I was tough on the audience. I was tough on the audience, really.
Yeah,
But
I mean, like,
this
and
was
I
the
get it.
point. This was the point. In order to be able to say Richard Allen is innocent, you've got to railroad other people and say that they absolutely did it. And I'm seeing it same thing with Koberger. People already had their opinions that one of the victims in the house did it.
Yeah.
And they're stuck on that. They can't move beyond it now because they already got into that mindset, and now they can't break out of that mindset.
Yeah,
So
which is so bizarre. And
No,
like
and
with
Bob and I
Alan,
had the same. Just sorry, babe. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say with Alan, I mean, we did what we always do. Like I became interested in that case initially when, obviously I knew about the case because geographically it's pretty close to where we live. I mean, it's within a couple of hours. And when they made the arrest finally after 5 years, and I'm like, wow, they made an arrest on this case. I can't wait to read the probable cause affidavit. And then they immediately seal it, which is not the norm. Like
right.
like there has to be extraordinary circumstances under which they seal a probable cause affidavit, because in this country, the way that it's supposed to be is transparency is king. We have to have transparency in the courts because we want to be able to hold our government accountable for what they're doing. We need to know what they're doing. And, in cases of high interest, when they did that, it sent up a red flag with me. I'm like, why are they sealing it? So, and it took months for them to unseal it. And then when they unseal it, I was like, what? There is nothing here that required them to seal this PCA, nothing. And every lawyer that I know said the exact same thing. They were stunned that it had been sealed. And then you get like, and as it progressed, and then you get like the Frank's memo, which blew my mind, mostly because I had never seen a legal pleading like that. And then she's ripping them off the case and she's calling the defense attorneys liars. And it was like, I had just never seen anything like it. And the judge just wasn't giving opinions. Like, if you
Outrageous
it
trampling.
was outrageous. It was outright. I've never seen anything like it.
Well,
So
for the record, I agreed with you guys on a lot of points. I agreed definitely that Judge Gull was an a-hole.
yeah,
I agreed with a lot of the points that Andrea made about Judge Gull. I didn't especially like Judge Gull's attitude and the way she went about things, but I also was on the fence a little bit about what they were sealing and why they were sealing it, and until it came out, obviously. But like we have here in Australia, everything's sealed, full stop. It starts sealed. It never starts transparent. But in the case where it's children, we have a lot higher bar as far as transparency goes when it's cases involving children. So in that sense, I was actually on the fence about what they were sealing and why they were sealing it, until you guys saw them and came out with your opinions as lawyers about there was no point in selling it, that none of that information that we were worried would be put out there about the children themselves was in those documents. Until that came about, I was on the fence about it, but I agree with you on that point. I also agree that his mistreatment in jail was appalling. Like, he shouldn't have, if they were going to move him from a jail to a prison to treat him because they had better facilities for the mental health stuff, then they should have treated him better in the prison, not worse. You
Yeah.
know, if you're doing it for that reason, then you need to have those things in place so there is better treatment. Otherwise, you're just repeating the problem that the jail had. So,
Right.
I
Yeah,
agree.
But going back to your point about if you start putting out other suspects, is that just railroading people? Well, it's different, obviously, when the defense does it than when creators are just coming up with their own theories. The defense, it's your job to say if the evidence points equally in a completely different direction. But even with, not unlike Bob's position on Reed, even in Richard Allen, Bob's position was often, why are they saying Odinist did it and trying to identify the Odinist, as opposed to clear somebody who has knows about Odinism or knows about these things. Not that it was um a a ritual where they were sacrificing the girls, but there was some ritual side of it, of someone who's got this kind of background or was trying to make it look like it has this kind of background, but not finger pointing a specific direction, just that they're just
Well, I mean,
wasn't.
in the Richard Allen case, though, when you get to the Franks memo, and like I just kept trying to, and for the record, on the Richard Allen case, I never said that I thought that he was factually innocent until after trial. Like leading up to it, I thought he was getting railroaded, but you can railroad a guilty person. You know what I mean? Like, a railroading doesn't necessarily meaning that
That's
you're
a great
railroading an
point.
innocent person. If somebody's like rights are being violated, like, just unbelievably, they're getting railroaded, and that person can very well be a guilty person. So
That's a
going
great
into
point,
it,
because that
yeah,
reflects back on the Gacy case, doesn't it? Because
it does. It really does. And it's like what they did
Let her
with
finish what she
Gacy.
was thinking, though.
Oh, I thought she did.
that
Sorry.
was what I was thinking. Go on.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
just want to
that's
make
good.
sure we weren't
You want to
talking
yell
over
at me
her.
No,
anymore?
he clicked where I was going with that, but yes.
Yeah, and so, when but like with the Franks memo, this 136-page opus that Andy Baldwin drafted up, like, all of the information that they had in that came from the state. Like, none of it was dreamed up by the defense, like sitting in a lab. This wasn't, they didn't plug the case into AI and say, hey, come up with some bullshit theory about Odinus that's crazy. Everything that they had came from the evidence that was presented to them by the state. And I'm reading it, and you've got this guy, this Elvis Fields guy, who makes this confession to a cop who I actually talk to in real life all the time, Kevin Murphy. And like, the guy says, look, I spit on one of the girls. Like, the little one was, she was feisty, and when at some point he goes back and asks Murphy, he's like, hey, if I spit on one of the girls, if they find my DNA on one of the girls, but I can explain it, am I going to be good? I mean, that's a pretty damning statement. And it's like, I don't know how you can kind of overlook that and pretend like it didn't happen, because this guy was like out of the cop's vehicle. He's walking back to his trailer. This is like a circumstance wherein it wasn't extracted out of him. He just kind of made it on his own accord, walking back to the cop car while the cop's sitting in the car and asks him this question. So I'm like, and it's like,
So it raises a lot of red flags, a lot of this stuff.
it raised a lot.
He's also a disabled, like, mentally challenged person. So this is where we come back to the railroading. We've just said his name, who we think he is, and what he said. But now we have the audience, and I'm not saying this is you guys. I'm just saying this is the response that the audience has. Is now we've got, a suspect that we're going to railroad, and that's where we get caught in. As creators, not as lawyers. Like, you both made some very important distinction here. As lawyers, you understand what it is you're trying to achieve in court and how that applies to the law and what it is you need to do for your client. But as creators, we are influencers, and that influences people. And so when we say something along those lines, it becomes blown all way out of proportion. So one of the things that I felt about the Odinism thing, my daughter married a druid, and their family practices a modern form of Odinism, and they named my grandson Odin. So I don't have that same feeling about Odinism that you guys do. Like I have,
Well, and we all recognize that's not like the Odinism that they were referring to is not the true Odinism. It was a prison
White
twisted sort of
supremacy. Yeah, it was a
version of
bastardized
Odinism, bastardized
version.
version. Right.
I
Yeah,
thought I thought
yeah.
Ali actually described it very well when she said that there's a distinction between the two things that were being presented, like that these people did some type of ritual thing, but it
Right,
wasn't part of a practice called Odinism. So
right.
I felt
Right.
that the audience got very carried away with that stuff. And so I was presenting challenges all the time with the audience, saying, well, show me a case where Odinism or any kind of ritual sacrifice in any group of, devil worship or whatever you want to call it, has resulted in a murder. Like show me an example, and I'll get on board with it. So
You
that
should
was
you should check out. I had on, and she didn't get to testify at trial, and for various reasons, but mainly Gull. I had on the defense expert in Turkey. You should check out that episode I did with her. I had her on for an interview after the conviction. It's pretty interesting. There's more than you think out there. I know that there's kind of like this overall mentality that there's never been a ritualistic killing in the United States. I think if you, because this is her expertise and she's really wonderful,
right.
and
See,
it's
I'm a numbers
fascinating.
person. I'm really a numbers person. I need to see the numbers. Like the FBI denies that there is anything that could even be remotely put into that category. They've got occasionally here and there, someone flips out and they happen to be devil worshippers and happen to think that that's what they're doing, but it was never a
Right.
group.
And I think
Right, like
that's
an
really
actual
more of what it
sacrifice.
is. Yeah.
Right.
I think
Like,
that's more
which
of
is
what
what,
it is
like,
rather.
Allie and I were always saying, like, quit saying this was like some kind of actual sacrifice. It's one thing for somebody to think that runes are cool, and they kind of like Vikings, and they're kind of into the vibe of
Yeah, white
like,
supremacy, freaking
yeah, well,
blah
yeah,
blah.
right. Their Norse paganism thing that they enjoy, like the concept and the thoughts of it, and Valhalla, and just there's aspects of it that they like, and they like runes. And then that doesn't mean that if they left a rune on one of the girls that it was necessarily a sacrifice at all. It just could have
Right.
been, it could have been like, oh well, we did something here, and like maybe this is a way that I get forgiveness, or whatever the case may be, but it wasn't something that they were making a sacrifice to the gods. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
but to the overall question, I think that the safest way to go about it as a creator is stick to the documents. Because
Yeah.
one thing that we've never done on our channel is ever named anybody that wasn't in a court document. So anybody that was like, we were simply reading court documents, and you had it in Karen Reed where 5 people or 6 people in that house were all accused of doing something. And it was the same thing. And it was those parallels in those 2 cases where you saw the 2 most divided, like just divided camps that I've ever seen online in terms of cases that were so vitriolic. And it was because in those 2 cases, you had the motion to dismiss that was filed by David Yannetti, wherein he laid out the defense's theory of the case, and it was pointing the finger at the people in that house. And then you had the defense in Allen file this 136-page Franks motion where they lay out their entire theory of the case, saying it was this other group of people who all were doing weird shit. And it's really hard it's like, if you kind of look at the things that in terms of weird things being done and the timing in which they were done, there's a lot of parallels. Like, the one guy who was posting these weird pictures that seemed to mimic the crime scene in Delphi, like within days of the homicides taking place, and no one would have known what it looked like. It's kind of strange. And it was like every lawyer that looked at it, including the 2 that took over for Andy and Brad Rosie when they were kicked off the case, they both came out and said that they thought that Richard Allen was factually innocent as well. So and those guys were handpicked by Gull, You know, like Labredo, the second set of lawyers,
Yeah.
the guy who's going to be lead counsel was like literally in front of Gull all the time in her courtroom because he's the public defender in Allen County. So it was like, and he came out flat out and said it. And defense attorneys are not supposed to come out and say my client's factually innocent. We saw that issue with that Bill Thompson brought it up in Koberger because Ann Taylor said it early on that my client's factually innocent. And that kind of thing, that sets the internet like off on fire. You know, because when a lawyer's coming out and saying something that ethically we're not supposed to say, we can say all day.
That was the reason that I asked that question, incidentally, because I didn't feel like that was ethical for her. I still
we're
today
really not supposed to say it.
Yeah, when the sentencing, I was watching the sentencing hearing, and she just had a straight face the whole time. I wanted to see more emotion from her. I understand that he didn't, like psychopaths generally don't. That was understandable, but I didn't get it from her that, you know, this I didn't get any feeling from her. I felt like she was just straight faced the whole time, and I kind of feel a bit weird about her going after someone else. Like they were about to railroad someone else for this crime. They had it all set up. They were ready to go to railroad someone else. And then he pleads out. So I'm stuck on a fence with that. Like I feel like there was some unethical crap going on there.
I guess we'll never know if she believed it wasn't him and then he fessed up or something. I don't know.
Yeah, what I was trying to figure out, and I kept asking people because I didn't know for certain, is when in time Ann Taylor said that, because the way it typically works. Like, so Alice and I represented this guy named Dr. Anthony Garcia. It was a case out in Nebraska, and he was a doctor formerly. And he was charged with 4 counts of homicide relating to 2 double homicides that happened 5 years apart in Omaha, Nebraska. And kind of the connective tissue between, you know, the 2 homicides was the fact that the 11-year-old boy who was killed along with the housekeeper in the 2008 homicides, his father was the director of the pathology department at Creighton University in their medical school.
Where
5 years later,
defendant was in their program.
Right. He was in 2001. So 7 years prior, Anthony was there, and he was fired as a resident back in 2001. And so then fast forward to 2013, another double homicide happens in a, you know, kind of a bedroom neighborhood in Omaha, Nebraska. And this time it's an older couple, the Brumbecks. And it so happens that Roger Brumbeck was the chair in the pathology department at Creighton Medical School. So they're like, all right, well, we don't know who the target was in the first set of homicides. You have an innocent, beautiful, innocent little boy who was killed. And then the housekeeper, who theoretically the killer could have thought was his wife. Right?
Or it could have been the target.
Or she could have been the target. So when we get that case, you know, we're like, if we go talk to our client, and my client is like, I didn't do this. You know, and at that point in time, we don't have any discovery. You know, your client is professing, you know, up, you know, forwards and backwards that I didn't do this. We don't have any way to know what's true and what's not true. We weren't there, you know. So it's like you listen to your client, you hear that they're professing their innocence, and then you wait for the discovery to come in, and that can take months.
Yeah, so Bob doesn't know if she had made that statement before she had a discovery.
So right. So if Koberger's like, I didn't do this, there's no way I'm not even capable of it. And she may have said, all right, well, it's still reckless even at that point for her to say that he's factual.
Because we never believe our clients. Well, we think we start in assuming the client's going to lie.
Right. And they do. I mean, like I can't remember. I don't know if Allie, like, I shouldn't say never, but most of the time, you know, depending on the magnitude of the case, they're typically going to come in and deny that they had any part in it. You know,
or
I mean,
it doesn't come up, and we just talk about what evidence they have and what evidence they don't.
I mean, but we've had clients where Yeah, like we've had
So when
client
you're
like
in that
Allie will be
position,
like, you know, like we're asking because we asked the question, what are they saying that you did? Like in an initial consult. We're not saying, did you do it or didn't you do it? Did you do it? Did you, you know, we're asking, what is the government saying that you did? And we ask them to answer it carefully. And so that they answer it carefully. And then they tell us what they're accusing them of. And, you know, sometimes you'll have people like, they'll say, well, you know, they'll slip up and like, oh yeah, I did this. And you're like, all right, moving forward, you know,
Go find
don't.
another lawyer.
well, on
Yeah,
that
you gotta
note,
find another lawyer.
on that note, if you're in that position, like just teach us as an audience, like what we're looking for. If you're in that position, for example, you thought your client was innocent, you start batting that they're innocent, you start batting that someone else done it, like a third party culprit defense, for example, then all of a sudden he's like, you know, I did it and I'm going to plead guilty. What is it that we're looking for in your reactions? Like the audience is saying, like, you know, she's there for him, like Ann Taylor was there for him. Maybe we shouldn't be expecting to see some sort of emotion on her face over
And
the
and
way.
I
You
was
want,
gonna
you
say, I
want a
don't
blank
think
slate
that
from her.
right,
Yeah,
I don't
no.
think that you should see emotion from your defense attorney. Now, in that same case that Bob's talking about, for the first, I don't know, probably year, I would not look at the pictures of the little boy. Like, I'd look at the autopsy pictures and, you know, and
Yeah,
then as we're, like, preparing for trial, Bob Senior's like, "You can't grimace when you look at the picture, you know, of the little boy right in front of the jury. You can't do that. You have to be able to look at the picture." And I was like, "Well, why not? Why can't they just see that I'm a human being too? And like, it's
yeah,
disgusting to me as well." But then also, when I finally looked at the pictures, I saw something very different than what the prosecution was, you know, the
portraying it.
narrative that they were putting out there, right? That the stab wounds were similar, the all these things, but it was like his first thing was, you can't go in there, you know, almost gonna tear up when they're showing the pictures of the little boy, or unable to look at it. Like, you have to be, you know, you have to be emotionless. And I
Yeah,
think that that's what most people, most lawyers expect that people want them to be, and that they should be, and something that they're trying to be. But
And
um
I'm a very emotional lawyer. Like you know, it's like I don't have a flat affect when I'm arguing in court. I'm very you know, I'm Italian, so I talk with my hands. I'm very effusive. You know what I mean? But it's like and I care. Like an emotional person. I have a lot of empathy. And you know, that's never, my humanity is never going to be stripped away by what I'm doing for a living. You know, I'm always going to be who I am. But you know, in a case like that, where you know, if we thought our client was factually innocent, but like factually innocent's not the right thing. Like we can, like in Garcia, for instance, they had zero forensic evidence and we're talking about 4 brutal homicides, all of which included multiple stab wounds to every single victim, right? So these were gruesome crimes, and to not have any forensic evidence linking Anthony Garcia to either of those crime scenes in a death penalty case is problematic. As a defense attorney, you're like, man, like they're selling a story here because they really don't have any evidence of him being in either of these homes. And like the first set of homicides were in, and that's our second season, which everybody should listen to as well. That was the case that we tried out there. I'm now on episode 67, so it's a super deep dive. I go through all of the evidence, both
not done
sides,
yet,
good,
but
bad.
just wait.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But at any rate, like in that particular case, the second set of homicides took place right around after the kids were dropped off by the bus from school. So you had a lot of parents, again, in a bedroom community, who were out there, and 5 or 6 people saw this person who didn't belong in the neighborhood wearing an ill-fitting suit, carrying some kind of satchel. They had enough people that kind of saw this guy that they came up with a composite sketch. None of these people, once Anthony Garcia was arrested, positively identified him as being the person they saw.
Or even
And
pointed him out as a possibility.
But the other part of it that I just couldn't wrap my mind around is the fact that we don't, because there are ways that you cannot leave DNA, whether it be sweat, whether it be skin cells, whether it be blood in a, I mean, typically a lot of times in a knife fight, if somebody's fighting for their lives, which they typically do, and you're trying to control that person, you're going to have your unweaponed hand trying to hold that person, and you'll get injuries on that person who's committing the crime. They'll injure themselves with a knife just because they're trying to use their other hand to control the person. So that's not unusual. So in this case, you've got this guy who's dressed in this ill-fitting suit, who's not covered in booties, has some kind of mask over his head, doesn't have gloves on, like is not in full, like a full, like, some kind of like Dickies, anything to try to, that you'd be typically using to try to make sure that you don't have your DNA left at the scene, like this guy dressed normally. And the way that this went down is somebody saw this guy, this person that was walking around the neighborhood, walk up the stairs of the house, ring the doorbell, and then the housekeeper opens it. And he says that he looked back because his youngest son was behind him and his oldest son was in front of him. And that when he looked back, that the person that was in front of the house was in the house. Now, in that first set of homicides, there were knives from the house that were used. So that person would have had no opportunity to be able to get themselves into a position where they couldn't have like with two people in that house, how are they putting gloves on in order to not leave fingerprints when they're going to grab knives from the knife block? You know what I'm saying? Like, how are you not leaving fingerprints when, there was clearly a major fight that went on before these homicides took place? And so we were just like, man, like this case is like, it haunted us, because we've got our client telling us he didn't do it. There's no forensic evidence, but
there's a lot of circumstantial evidence.
They had a great story. Like their whole revenge theme, was a really compelling story. They came up with a really good theory. And, and then the bottom line, because we were very much focused on the housekeeper and her relationships that she had, in particular, her daughter, with that she was actually the target and that the young boy was collateral. And then whatever happened 5 years after the fact had nothing to do with it, and there was also another doctor from that program that basically had the exact same history with Creighton that Anthony Garcia did. He was terminated. There were people that said they were terrified of him. He had some real nasty back and forths with some of his professors and some of the doctors that were overseeing his work. And, so it was like, and they liked him as the suspect for a long, long time.
I forget what got us on this topic, though.
I don't know. I've gone way off topic, though.
Well, just to bring it back to a topic that we've been talking about, because it kind of does come back to a topic which was about when we were talking about the read technique versus peace. The technique of peace is about truth seeking. This is kind of as opposed to adversarial. So most of our systems are built on the adversarial system. You've got to have a story, you've got to have a motive, you've got to have all this stuff. It's not necessarily about seeking the truth.
Right.
Where I think the French system, from memory, just my little studies on things, but I think it's the French system is based on truth seeking. And so you end up in a different place when you are just seeking truth. And you're not just trying to make up a story that fits so you can get the conviction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens too often when you've got old cases or cases that they're desperate to resolve. Yeah. And then finding the truth, like you can see again in the Reed case, you can't get to the truth if so many years have passed and there was no real investigation trying to investigate it.
Well, you can't get to the truth if you're in an adversarial system, because the truth is not the objective. It's winning.
That's it. Exactly. Which is not the point of this thing. We're like, justice and the truth are not necessarily the same thing, in terms of what we consider justice, and it's like, from our perspective as defense attorneys, it shouldn't be about the wins for prosecutors. They have too much power for it to be about wins. And it's like here in the US, that's an elected position, so there's a political aspect to it. And if you're running on a campaign of I'm tough on crime, look at my conviction rate, it's 98%, that becomes your motive and your motivation, which is not how this thing's supposed to work, and it's like,
Kinda how
because
they
it's
started
hard.
out. That's how they started out in Massachusetts. We have a 99% conviction rate. It's like, well,
They
yeah,
all do it. They all do
what
it.
what's that versus your wrongful conviction rate? Like,
Well,
Right.
they'll never admit it. They'll never, like, that's the other thing. They never
Never.
admit that they got something wrong.
right.
Ever. It's like if you're lucky and you're 4 prosecutors down the road from the guy who prosecuted the case initially, because 20 years has gone by, and the prosecutor's office might say, all right, we've sent this up to the conviction and integrity unit, and they've taken a look at it, and we're going to re-examine it. You can get that happening sometimes. And I'm glad to see that more and more prosecutors' offices are getting those conviction integrity units to kind of look at some of these cases that are head scratchers. And, like I covered 2 cases yesterday on our channel where I had a guy who was in for 24 years, named like Timmy Donald, who was factually innocent, but he spent 24 years of his life in prison. He was on our show, and it's like you'd expect these people to come out just being rage filled, and he's the exact opposite. Like, he's decided to dedicate his time to try to help people in his position, to try to get them out and get them exonerated. Because once you're convicted in this country, it is near impossible to get it undone. It just is.
Well, I think it's probably like that in most countries. It's definitely, it's actually a lot easier to get it undone in your country than in ours, believe it or not.
Wow. That's saying
But
a lot.
again, it winds us back to some of the things that we did to fix, and it is based. What we fixed was based largely on American mistakes as well. So, we
Yeah.
talked about replacing the Reed technique with the peace model, because of the deception during interviews and threats of higher charges, coercing people into saying things that they didn't do. It also brought about, recording interviews. So basically, if it wasn't recorded, it didn't happen. That's kind of where we are now. But this all only came out in like 1995. These aren't things that we always had. We've tripped over our own feet and had to do things, the hard way. But in 95, there was a case called Henry Keogh. I forget what the case was. Something big, long. Keogh versus something. I forget them off the top of my head, but the case was about Henry Keogh. One of the things that brought about was a duty of disclosure. You've had Brady. It is a type of Brady law, but you guys have had that since whenever. I don't know what year that Brady. I've actually said it like 500 times on my streams, and I can't remember what year Brady is, but
I think it's 1970.
70s. There you go. Thank you. But yeah, so that for us, that only came about the Brady-like duty to disclose all material. For example, only came out.
Actually, 63 was when it first came out, and that's when the Brady rule came out, and then the Supreme Court. So Maryland v. Brady was 63, and then Brady v. U.S. was 1970. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. No, I love it because I don't have a good memory for those numbers. And like I've said it like 500 million times in my streams talking about Brady and quoting it. So, but yeah, for us, this only happened in 2014. So the Keogh case happened in 1995. And then it went through a series of appeals, and different things happened that changed the way we do things here. And finally, in 2014, we end up with like a Brady-like duty to disclose. So moving on from there, we also had post-conviction review mechanisms. So you've got a very strict process of review for appeals. And when you've exhausted it, you're at the end of the line, you've exhausted it. Whereas Australia kind of introduced a way to be able to review that last line that you've exhausted. So that's kind of helped a lot too to fix a lot of the problems. And then, tightening the forensic standards. Like, I feel you guys are probably at this point where you really need to tighten the belt on forensic standards. Or I could be wrong because I'm only watching certain cases. Like, you're the lawyers, you probably know better than I do. But for us, it was definitely the Keogh case and the Lindy Chamberlain, the dingo case.
Oh, no, we do have a lot of our forensics are in doubt, are in question, are being just argued between different, same experts in the fields. Some courts are starting to say, all right, that is now junk science, while some courts aren't. So we definitely have issues with our forensics and what the courts have relied on, typically, and it's a very slow process. Like, they used to let
Yeah.
people rely on lie detector tests, and it took a long time before they stopped being able to do that. So we
Bite
we
mark
definitely have
comparison.
issues with our forensics, and it's taking way too long for the courts to recognize that the experts are saying, whoa, wait a minute, this is not as sure as you once thought it was. This is not being applied correctly. There's a lot of, a lot, and then you've got bad people that do forensics, and they want to help, thinking they're helping catch the bad guy when they could just be fingering an innocent guy.
Right, and a very good point. Example, case in point, is the gun testing that they did in Richard Allen's case. Right,
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
it's a perfect example of coming to terms with a standard, accreditation, standards, methodologies. So all of those things we only
Yeah.
just
And the Blue Man Group.
right.
Good old Judd Welcher. Good old Judd Welcher.
I didn't even know there was actually a Blue Man Group until people started talking about it. I'm gonna have to go look what this Blue Man Group is now.
It was the first thing that came out of my mouth. I'm like, oh my God, he's doing the Blue Man Group experiment here.
A
I'm
musical.
like, wow,
Musical.
that's some real science. Yeah, it's yeah. I mean,
So
So
I
the
was
way
going to
that we
ask.
count.
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
It's
I
a
was
bad
just saying, like the best way that we
Not you,
have to
babe.
challenge. Oh,
Aussie.
sorry, go Aussie.
I'll fight you for it. No,
Don't wrestle.
I was just going to wrap up and say, like, the two things that changed for us in the area of preventing junk science before it reaches the jury was definitely the Henry Keogh case. It was just bad pathology all around, and then the dingo case, which was misread blood evidence. So we tightened our belts and went, and I think actually we tightened them so hardcore that we're actually leading. Some of our universities here are actually the leading researchers for some of these sciences now.
Wow.
So some of them, not all of them.
That's good to
Yeah.
hear. So what was this with your mashups that did someone say that you shouldn't be allowed to do your mashups, or what was the issue with that?
We love your matchups.
Well, that was in my questioning. I was actually going to start there and then get into all this heavy stuff, but it's cool. Let's do that. So, yeah. So a lawyer did a react to my interview / not supposed to be an interview with Aidan Carney, and he said something about the mashups, like if the mashups that you've already done, like as soon as you get bigger, they're going to demonetize you. And I'm like, well, hang on a second. Isn't that dependent on transformative, whether it's transformative enough to meet the guidelines? And so now I'm sitting here looking back over it. I mean, it's okay, I've been paid for those, but if they're going to demonetize my channel, or but like the whole channel just gets demonetized because of shit I did a year ago, that is a worry. So I'm just wondering, you guys watched my mashups.
Yeah,
Did you feel that it was transformative enough?
I
did.
thought that they're transformative enough, but I was just having this discussion with an IP lawyer, intellectual property lawyer, about, if you're looking for somewhere to go, if you could figure out a way to help people on YouTube, that they're just like without a recourse, because YouTube's just a fucking machine, and you're objecting into the wind, like, no, no, no. Like, I think they're transformative, and I think they're entertainment and should be fair use, because I mean,
they are fair use. I mean,
right.
you're taking like little, like small clips, and you're turning it into something different. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like so for me, that's the definition of transformative and the definition of fair use. So
Right, but
it's
this
like
is not official legal advice because we don't know what the hell YouTube would do.
right.
But, our personal opinions are, yeah, sure, I think they are, and I don't know. I mean, someone's saying that a year later, they can be like, "Oh, that thing that we let sit there," because in the law, when
And
they
we've already paid you for.
Right,
Right.
right. That's setting a precedent that you have said it was okay. So how were you to know? But that's a fight that if it were to happen, who's going to put up that fight? Where do you even make that fight? Is it worth, the money for the fight? I mean, that's like the whole thing with the way YouTube, or I guess YouTube's Google, right? That they
Yeah.
handle their shit. But you would think under the law, the fact that they paid you for it is them saying that there's not an issue with it, that they can't change their mind after the fact and penalize you, but that doesn't mean that they won't, you
Right,
know.
right.
But
I
Like
believe it
for
doesn't mean
instance,
that they won't.
we were in Boston this weekend, and that guy Teddy Swims, that singer Teddy Swims, who's got like a couple really big hits. We just happened to be walking like
he does
through.
these pop-ups where he just
He
shows
does
up
these
places.
pop-up shows,
Yeah.
which was like out in this like kind of concourse area in this area that had all kinds of little shops and stuff. And there was like hundreds of people out there. All of them, of course, had their phones up. And
Yeah,
like we recognized the song right away. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go live. And then I freaked out. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get like a strike because they're gonna hear the song
yeah,
and they're gonna give me a strike, even though it's him singing it and he's out in public. And so
right.
it's like I like I don't know.
One of
It's
my friends
frustrating because we
say,
don't really get any kind of like real clear guidelines on what they consider transformative. Because like Allison said, it's like it's bots. Your initial things come from bots. Like
yeah,
they have trigger words. If they hear these words, I'll get or we're demonetizing. Like we're covering this Aaron Spencer case, which is a really fascinating case, and there's a lot of morality questions in that case. And that was a case where there
Mm.
was SA involved of a child, and the guy who was accused of SAing this guy's child was charged with 43 counts, including SA of a child. That child in particular, he got a $5,000 bond. He somehow got out after paying this very, very low bond. And 3 months after he's out, he somehow gets his hands, because he's groomed this little girl who was
Is he
13 at
either
the
lured
time.
her or kidnapped her? No one knows, I
Right,
guess.
right, right. And this guy's 67 years old, just so we're clear. The guy who's the victim in this case. So at any rate, Aaron Spencer hears his dog barking in his house. He goes to his daughter's room. She's gone. They start panicking.
all
He
The
right.
hops in
wife
the
is
car to
calling
look for her.
911. He hops in his truck. They know what the description of his vehicle is, and he finds them in short order. They weren't not that far from the house. He runs him off the road because he can see his daughter's in the truck. The
Yeah,
guy gets out of the truck. Aaron Spencer gets out of the truck. He's screaming for his daughter to get out of the truck. The guy's telling her, don't get out of the truck. Stay in the truck. Stay in the truck. And this guy charges at him. Aaron Spencer puts 7 bullets in him and kills him. And then they charge Aaron Spencer with second-degree murder, even though this guy who's out on bond, who's got a stay-away order from, he's
Has
absolutely
kidnapped
barred
his
from
daughter.
he's kidnapped his daughter,
If you don't have the
so.
parents' permission, whether she was lured there because of all the grooming or whether he physically took her,
And this is
it's
12:30 at
kidnapping.
night.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no question, so
So
it's
anyway,
like
Bob got demonetized because he said the
I don't
word
even know.
SA.
I don't
I
know.
think
But
because
Melanie
I thought
got demonetized on it too.
right, we
Both of
think
us.
it's because they used the word child, but said it outright instead of
Yeah.
Maybe.
SA.
Yeah, you're not allowed to say the essay. That's why we use the initials. You're not allowed to say a lot of things, and
Yep.
they will remove the monetization from that video where you said
Yep.
it.
Right, which is ridiculous when you're talking about it in a legal capacity, in a someone's been charged with
Absolutely.
capacity, but there's no fight in City Hall.
But
Yeah.
I think the argument that was being made was that my whole channel would get demonetized, not just the videos themselves. So
Yeah.
I thought
actually
I
thought,
thought you got 3 strikes and then you were
Well,
demonetized.
what did Jay get
yeah,
demonetized for? Remember they demonetized his channel and then they gave it back to him like months and months and months later? It
I
was
don't
it was
remember.
something. It was like, and it wasn't even mashups, but it was something that was definitely fair
I
use, at
thought it
least
was
in
just the
our opinion.
trials, streaming the trials.
No, I don't think it was that. It was something
No,
else.
Aiden got demonetized too, but that was because people were complaining on his using the report tool so much. That's why I think that's how he
It's
got
ridiculous.
demonetized.
That
It's
was the
all
other thing I talked to that lawyer about. I said, then you have people just being punitive, trying to shut down a competitor or somebody that they
yeah,
don't like. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So moving on from that, like I'm glad you feel it was transformative, but when you watched those mashups, did you feel like, as we did, that it pulling together some of the humorous parts, still keeping the storyline of what you were all saying, but also the funny parts and the bits that where we were letting our hair down and just not stressing
Yeah.
about things? So did you find that washed away the tension a bit when you saw them as well?
yeah.
I love them. Yeah, because like what we call that as lawyers is gallows humor. You know, we work in a very, very dark field. You know, we're dealing with people on their worst day. We're dealing with victims that have lost their life. You know, I mean, it's super heavy stuff. So,
And
Yeah.
I
you know,
think it definitely
sometimes you need,
helped like the people who watch it, like as something less intense to watch to bring down the emotion of it
yeah,
all.
like bring the temperature down. Cause like what I would see on your videos is that like kind of both sides like enjoyed it. You know what I mean? It was like I
Yeah.
would see that it was like because it wasn't taking a position per se. It was kind of pointing out
Well, a lot of
something
times it
funny
took a
that happened.
position just the sheer fact that we were all mocking something.
Yeah, yeah, but it was usually something that was funny that happened during the trial, you know,
Right.
and there's going to be things that happen. Like I always think that it's important in a trial to have inject a reasonable amount of humor that's appropriate. You know, I don't think there's any harm in getting the jury to chuckle about something. You know, I think because it's a very tense situation,
Right.
and
I
you
just
know,
laughed so hard when
yeah,
Bev
you know,
said to Yannetti, was it Yannetti? Don't, what was it? She said, "Don't say," and he said what it was.
right. I mean, there were
I can't
five or
remember what it
six
was, but
different
yeah,
things
Right, I
that
can't
I
remember right now
recall.
either.
yeah, yeah.
But
Uh,
there was, like, the one time where she said
of course, Your
somebody
Honor.
said the
That's what it was.
attractive looking something, and he was like, "Oh, that's me," or the other attractive looking guy. I don't know,
Yeah, yeah. There was some
there was
funny
something like
stuff.
that too.
For me, I think I thoroughly enjoyed Bob doing the bloop 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 bloop.
The blooping, yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah,
if
and
it
it's
was on
funny.
my own there, but I just cracked up when I saw it. It had to be a feature in one of the mashups because I loved
Yeah,
it.
it was like, and people like in our chat will sometimes complain when we pause to talk because like some creators when they're streaming a trial will just talk over the lawyers and like our crowd gets upset. So we'll pause it. Like if we want to make a point about, you know, a point of law or something that was said or something that we're thinking is worth mentioning with regard to what's going on in the process, we'll pause it. So we'll build up time to be able to fast forward for blooping. You know, I mean,
I
I like
appreciated
being
the
able to bloop.
pausing. I appreciated the pausing because it gave me that moment to like capture what you were saying
Yeah.
without the two things going on. In
Right.
the early days, I was trying to keep the actual case going in the background and then putting you over the top saying the things that you were saying as you were responding, and it just wasn't working. The audience was like, oh, that's too messy. So it was good when when everyone got to the point that they were pausing to have their little monologues.
Yeah.
It worked out perfectly, but I still got
Yeah.
people about how I did that as well, which is always going to happen.
Yeah.
So when did you first realize that we had actually made you guys like memes in the mashup?
Ah, I
Was it?
don't know. It was because like I had the podcast out for like a year and a half, almost 2 years before we started the YouTube channel. And really I started it because if you look at our YouTube, it says that we started it in 21, but I didn't put it up any content until like 23. So like when I first started doing, I had no idea what I was doing per usual. It's one of our running jokes, you know, the tech wizardry over at our channel. Like, I'm
I
always
mean, it's
screwing
how we
things
started
up.
everything. We left law school, started a law firm. He started a
Right.
podcast, he started recording the first episode, released the first episode, and then keep developing it before, figure it
Right.
out as you go along. That's kind of our
Yeah, that's how
thing.
we roll. So like, you know, but like with the YouTube, initially when we started it, and you know, I had to drag Allie against her will. She's like, I love doing the podcast, but I don't like being on camera. I'm like, dude, like that's ridiculous. You're beautiful. People are gonna love you, whatever,
Mm.
whatever. So she got more comfortable with it. And it was like initially, because I can sit on a stream and just talk, as you can tell, I'm a talker. So, you know, I can talk for hours just like sitting here, which is hard to do. It's like not everybody can do it, you know, and I'm comfortable doing it. And so like the channel started to grow kind of organically and through word of mouth. And, you know, in terms of like the marketing side of it, I don't really know how to do it other than hashtags, you know? So it's like, we just hope that people like the channel enough. And then that's what you kind of hope is that,
So when did we
you do
figure out
enough.
that there were memes? That's what she
Yeah.
was
Like, well,
asking.
because like, it was really, fortunately, I have a pretty big Twitter account. So that's where I would see it, you know,
Yeah,
and it's
someone
like,
would tweet, "Hey, did you see this?" And then we'd go
right.
check it out.
Like, and then like I ran into your first, like some of your first mashups, not from YouTube, but I became aware of it from Twitter. So, or
Yeah.
X, you know, so
And
I'm
then
like,
I
oh,
used
cool.
your light thing. And I think I might have reached out to you, like, "Can I post this up or something?" I don't know, but I watched that tail light put together thing.
Yep.
Um, that
The red
was
the red light chroma
yeah, that was
adjustment.
really, really good. And then it also made me realize that was wrong about a piece that I thought wasn't in there or wasn't the
Which
piece that was in
Allie
the
for
picture.
days was texting pictures of this piece to our family members. Like, all right, I'm going to show you two pieces of a tail light. Does this one look more like this one or does it look more like that one? I was like, what are you doing?
'Cause I thought that one that they took a picture of was not the one that was in uh, the final production of
Assembly.
it all. Right,
Assembly.
assembly of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But you did a really, really good job with that
Yeah, we
whole
love your content. We think your content's great. We do.
yeah.
I
Thanks.
love the mashups and I think your videos are great, you know, and it's like I missed your thing with Aiden, but I watched your apology thing and I'm like, I felt sad that you felt the need to do that because I mean, sometimes, you know, just you
Well,
know,
I
it's
wasn't
hard.
apologizing to him as such. I was apologizing to the audience because apparently we let them down. So I was trying to appease the audience, and I think
I
he
don't think
understood where I was coming from with that. So
I don't think you needed to do that because you know, I mean, sometimes you just you don't flow with somebody that you have on, you know what I mean? And it's like this, we're just having like a super enjoyable, casual conversation, you know what I mean? Which is
right.
typically how I like to do it.
Somebody over here keeps saying we're an AI couple.
No, no.
It's
No, I think I mean
it's
Aussie
because
Insider.
Aussie's not here as a real person, so that's why.
AI is my initials, Aussie Insider. So it's kind of an inside joke. AI.
Oh, okay, got it.
It's not
I
entire.
love
They're
it.
not entirely saying that you are, but it is a joke, an inside joke, and it is referring to me not being on the screen, which
So what
Well,
happened
in
with
Aussie's
Lori
defense,
Vallow today?
she asked us before we came on. She's like, "Are you cool with me?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." So, you know, I'm like,
Yeah, it's fine with
"Your
me.
voice is lovely. I love the
Oh,
accent,
we got
so
we
I'm
got her
I'm good
picture.
with it."
So
Yeah.
what happened with Lori Vallow? Because I see you put it in our outline notes, and I did see someone mentioned it. I didn't see what happened with her today.
She got sentenced to 2 life sentences in Arizona
right.
Okay.
for both cases. So,
So did she say something? Or was
She
it
was
just the sentencing?
actually weird. She was like smiling and jovial, and people are telling these like tragic stories and in tears. And she's, it
she
was
is
weird.
warped.
Yeah.
It,
She is a warped human being. Like, and I don't know if you heard, Allie, but Colby, her son, is in the hospital. He had two minor strokes,
Oh,
and he's got a GoFundMe going. Like, and it's like that kid's like what he's gone through with his mother. like in the loss of his family is like
That's
just
taking an obvious
devastating.
toll on his body.
Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
sad.
Right. I felt the it's there was her, and was it her lawyer who was who was sitting next to her, Bob?
It might have
During
been her private investigator because she didn't have a lawyer in that one, right?
Yeah, like so
Oh, there was a standby lawyer or something.
she
We'll
had
call it.
standby counsel, but I think we ended up finding out that the person that was sitting next to her, the guy, was
The
her
private
PI.
investigator.
Yeah.
they were having these like little whispery conversations between each other. It was like they were passing notes back and forth. That's what I was watching. I don't know. Is that what it seemed like to you, Bob? It just seemed really disrespectful to the
I didn't even watch it, Aussie. Like I just saw it on the Twitter. Like I'm over Lori Vallow. Like Allie and I did when her first trial, her Idaho trial took
Which
place.
was
Allie and
the
I,
most interesting of all the trials and the most
it was, but they
detailed.
didn't stream it. What they did with that is they would release the sound every day after court, like at 6 o'clock.
We turned it into a podcast.
Yeah,
Like,
so that was the first time that I had brought Allie onto the podcast when we started the docket, which is where we cover current cases, and so that's when my love bug came and joined me on the mic. So it was awesome, and it's a great podcast because we would kind of pull clips of sound after Allie would listen at 2.5 times speed because she can. I can't do that. It's like, I'm like, how can you listen to this shit and understand what they're saying? She's like, I don't know. I do though. So she would go and she'd pull out the most interesting aspects of the testimony, and then we'd go through it and just kind of analyze it, like every day of the trial. And we were trying to keep up with it, but because the defense.
Why didn't anyone kick up a stink about Lori Vallow's trial not being televised?
I think that they may have back when it was happening, and then the judge. I think that the way that the judge dealt with that was to release the audio.
Yeah, was a compromise.
The day after. It was always the day after. But they ended up having issues where the witnesses were caught having watched stuff or admitted in trial that, I listened to this guy's testimony. I listened to that guy's testimony, which I think is the biggest fear in those kind of cases, that you're going to have witnesses who have not yet testified listening. And for those of you guys that don't know, Bob and I are sitting on yoga ball chairs. So you see him bouncing.
Way better for your back, isn't it?
Oh, it's way better. And it's like, because if you're going to sit in this chair for 6 hours, like a regular chair just was killing me. So we decided to get these yoga balls.
Well, it was like some form of exercise for
to work your
for
core.
8 hours.
And Glen Lake, I do deny being AI.
I was wondering if you saw that. He's our regular class clown, Glenn here.
Yeah, I'm on the record on many lives about my absolute terror of AI, artificial intelligence. I was literally in
the car yesterday, babe, thinking about it, and I was like, it feels to me like literally like I'm watching someone come at someone I know about to murder them, and all I can do is sit there and not able to scream, and it's going to happen, and there's nothing I can do about it. And I feel like that humanity is on its way out a lot sooner than people think, and there's literally nothing we can do about it because all the people with money and all the people with power want to just keep going,
make
with
money,
AI, make America the leader of AI.
That's the scary part. I was going to sound like a geek and say, you realize AI has been running shit for quite some time, like at least 20 years. But the point that Ali just made is very important, because once people in power get their hands on it and they're trying to make the AI only say what they want it to say, now we're not in AI territory anymore. We're in propaganda territory. So,
and I'm literally worried that once AI is able to get into the power grids, they don't need humans anymore at all. Like, it's the end of humanity. But I have been telling my kids for years, one day you're going to not be able to rely on the internet because you're going to go in there and type, and I make up stupid examples. Like, what is a cloud? Oh, it's a fish that swims it's an animal that swims in the ground. Like, you're not going to be able to believe the information you are being told, which goes to like what you were saying.
Library. It used to be when I first started, because I think we were way behind you guys in internet being available to households in Australia. But for me, it was when I first started at uni, it just become available to households, and you could rely on it. You could, instead of going to the library, you could actually find it on the internet, and it was pretty reliable. But it's certainly takes a little bit of understanding what you're doing and how to filter out the bullshit to get to the actual, this is the answer. It's getting more and more like that. There was something else I was going to add to that.
Wait, Allie, tell your AI lawyer story, your recent AI lawyer story. It's a good one.
So Bob has, like, when I've had to draft like really complicated post-conviction petition recently, and it's got, you need to create, like, he's like, use AI and try and get rid of some of the redundancies, or see if it can help you restructure it or whatever. So I was like, I can't use AI. And then I'd mess around with it and realize that AI just makes shit up all the time. So I got this motion the other day on a case, and it was so contrary to the position that I planned to make in court, like, just shut me down, that I was stunned. Like, how could my instinct and Bob's instinct, because Bob was telling me, make this argument, da 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 da, be so wrong? So I was like, you know what? In the morning, I'm going to just get up and read the cases that this lawyer cited, and one did not exist at all. It was not a real case.
Completely made up a case.
Right. And the other,
AI about that. Next time you're on there, ask AI about that. It has an interesting response.
And then the other one was a real citation, but the case had nothing to do with what it said. And a lot of times you're quoting a case. He quoted a case, and that quote existed nowhere. And not only that, it wasn't about that. So, like, I just sent that case to the judge, and I didn't have to say a word. He was like, I was trying to figure out who sent me this case. And I was like, I did, Your Honor, because he's like, yeah, I'd like counsel to explain to me, why did you cite this case? It has nothing to do. And he kept trying to say he thought he made a mistake. And the judge is like, no. I want to know why and how in the hell you did this. So I never even mentioned to the judge, by the way, the other case that he cited literally doesn't, it's not even a case in the free world.
And she tried to give the other lawyer a heads up. Like,
yeah, I emailed and called him. I'm like, hey, I think whoever drafted this used ChatGPT or something, because this case is made up, and I called and left him a voicemail trying to give him a heads up, but he was shocked when the judge came at him.
Did you, on that topic, did you actually look into some of the case law that Sarah, what's her name, McLaughlin in the Reed trial put into motions? Because some of that was like so way off base. It said exactly the opposite. Like, they would just take this one sentence that was said in that case law and go, this is what it means. But when you take the whole context of what they were saying, the whole paragraph, or sometimes it was pages, obviously,
right?
That's not what they were saying. Like, she was so queen throughout this whole trial, and even in motions, the motions to dismiss and responses to it, completely off base with the case law that she was citing. I'm assuming,
and that's a violation of her ethical obligation too. It's called candor to the court. You can't miscite something for a proposition that it doesn't really stand for. And people tend to do that. They'll just pick a quote that sounds good, but like you just said, when you put it in context, it's the exact opposite of what it meant or what they were saying. Or
apparently she's doing it again in the Welsh case. I was listening to his lawyer argue something with the judge yesterday before I went to bed, and I was like, oh my God, is she doing that again? He's like, this is the case law that she stated, this is what she said it means, but actually that's not what it means. And he went off blah 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 blah, said basically the context of what that case law actually meant. But then the judge went, I actually do like that judge, by the way. I don't know if I should or not yet, but I do like
Lauren
that.
Walsh. In the Walsh case?
Yeah, the Brian Walsh case.
I like her too.
So did the judge admonish the state for it? Did she respond to that?
I didn't.
I'm asking.
I don't know. Yeah.
No, not really. She kind of brought up a different sort of angle of the argument, which I kind of felt didn't get to the meat and potatoes of what he was trying to argue. And I feel he didn't either, because I think I fell asleep. He was still trying to put his point across. So, but yeah, she didn't admonish the state for it. She was still trying to tease out what direction he was going to be coming from. And I did understand his direction. I don't necessarily agree that his direction is going to work with her, because I do like the judge. I think she comes across with some really strong points. But yeah, it was just McLaughlin at it again was kind of, the where my brain went. So I'm not surprised. Is anybody else surprised?
Not surprised.
Not surprised at all. At all.
She is the most likely person who drew up a lot of those, who did the research for those motions, right?
I'm assuming
It
so, because
seems-
we know Liza, I think, did most of the legal writing for Karen's team, and she's awesome. Like, we were desperately trying to get Liza on our channel because, like, we wanted woman power first and foremost, and we know as being attorneys that she was such a linchpin in terms of that team because she knew everything backwards and forwards. She was just the resource. Like, if they needed a page for a transcript when they're trying to impeach somebody, where's the guy? They go to
right,
Liza.
or to answer when something went out, when something came in,
Right.
what they did with it, all that,
Right.
and
She
so
just
much
knew the
more.
case.
But
Yeah, she knew the case forward and backward. So
we'll end up having Yannetti and Alessi on
Alessi,
at
Bob,
some point.
yeah, they'll come on.
Yay! I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
In the Karen Reid trial, who annoyed you the most out of everybody and their behavior? Who annoyed you the most? Like, had you thumping on the table the most?
Brennan, obviously.
Well, other than Brennan, there was the two cops that really, and I can't think of their names.
Fuckface.
Yeah.
Gallagher drove you nuts. You hated Gallagher. But yeah, in terms of kind of like consistently bugging the shit out of me, it was Hank. Because it's like I kept saying, Hank is really a defense attorney by trade. He was brought on as a special prosecutor. His practice, if you Google his law firm, dude's a defense attorney. Everybody knows he's a mob lawyer. He repped, Whitey Bulger, but he's a defense attorney. And I'm like, he's a turncoat. Like, he's doing everything the defense attorneys like fight against in terms of what prosecutors do in those courtrooms.
Right. You think he would have played a fair game.
Right. Like, he was playing dirty pool left and right, and it was disgusting. So I was like I kept calling him a
annoyed me
turncoat.
equally as much as Lally, because Lally kept lying about shit as well. I think it was actually equal for those two for me. Who actually tied my stomach in knots with anguish was Bev. Every time she opened her freaking mouth, I wanted to smash the screen. Seriously.
She really kind of mailed it in the second trial. You know what I mean? She just like
it was not with her allowing things and sustaining things. She did a whole ton of that.
Right.
No, I mean, in terms of her
a track record of all the things that she did there where it was blatantly biased, like blatantly taking the side of the Commonwealth. This wasn't in the light most favorable to the Commonwealth. This was blatantly taking a side against the defense and tying the hands behind the back. And I ended up at 60 different points where I felt that she was doing that. And I ran it through the AI. Sorry, guys, but I did. Just to double check that I wasn't making shit up. Like, I'm sitting here as an audience member with no law background whatsoever. Well, I have a little bit of law background, but certainly not in common law. But I was actually running it through the AI. Okay, this situation, how is that supposed to be handled? Like, how could she handle it without the bias? And I came up with 60 different points. And that was something that I couldn't do with like other cases. Like, I know a lot of people hated Judge Gull and feel that she was a lot worse than Bev, but I couldn't actually dig up 60 different points about Judge Gull actually being completely biased. There was a lot for Judge Gull, but for some reason, Canoni just topped it for me. And then I used the AI to actually write about how I was feeling about that, because I couldn't actually put it into words without wanting to smash everything. So I did do a couple of videos where I got the AI to help me like reframe this, because I'm so frustrated it's not going to come across right. And there was 2 or 3 different stories that I actually put up there for the audience where the AI sort of helped me like level my freaking head out and not be so angry about it. But that was something that I felt was missing as well for the audience, because a lot of the lawyers who they were watching were still very careful about the criticism of the other lawyers and the judge and what was being said and done. Because obviously you've got jobs to keep. Like, I don't know why people took offense to me saying that, but you obviously have to be careful. Even a Australian lawyer, Hayden, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him, Aussie Overlord, even he is bound to not be criticizing lawyers in America. So he's got to be careful what he says and how he says it about lawyers and judges in other countries as well. So in order for the audience to actually feel like they were getting their fill of what's wrong with these pictures, I was trying to put out stories where it was filling that gap for them. You know, it has Bev broken the rules as far as to the point where she could lose her immunity, for example. So I was trying to come up with examples with the help of AI where she would be actually losing her immunity because she did X, Y, and Z outside of her function as a judge in that case. So things like that, where we weren't getting our fill of like, we just need to bash on Bev more.
Right.
So some of my content, the AI actually did help me write there, because I'm not familiar with, you know, that side of it. It's hard enough to be familiar with your system of justice, let alone how the judges are supposed to behave. But on that topic, I accidentally found out that Bev she actually transferred herself by her own hand into the Plymouth civil court. And that kind of like blew my mind. And I was speechless when she turned up on the civil court docket. How did you guys feel about that?
I mean, I think from what we heard, it's a completely different Plymouth civil courthouse than the one that
No, it's the same
the one
one.
that would hear the civil matter.
No, it's the same one. She's
I
currently
mean, she's not going to sit on Karen's case. I mean, like the
No.
way that it works, like our judges, like in our counties, it's not unusual for them to get kicked from criminal to civil. And frankly, it's probably a more preferable job if you're a judge to go over to the civil division, because it's just
Right. But
it's
Especially if you're ready to be out.
as an RAJ herself, she actually assigned herself. She didn't, someone else didn't assign her to that court. She did it herself. She assigned herself to that court
I think she
She
was
might just be burnt.
like
because
that's
she
what I
lives
like.
in Plymouth, I think, because she lives in Plymouth.
Yeah, I think what I like, she's at that point in her career on the bench that she's probably just mailing it in at this point, and like she just wants to kind of go back and you know, like I don't think there's anything nefarious behind it. I honestly don't. I think, you know, like she sat on the most expensive DUI case in American history. You know, there's never been a more expensive DUI conviction in the history of the United States. I guarantee it. Plug that into AI. So, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
I think she was done with it. You know, I think, you know, judges get burnt out. We see it all the time in our courtrooms with our judges who've been on the bench for a long time. It's just like criminal courts a lot. You know, I mean, you're dealing with like just horrible shit day after day after day, and it grinds on you. I mean, we're all human beings, and you know, I mean, you could tell in terms of her demeanor that she was over it. Like all of us knew at the end of every day, like she stopped on the dot because it was time to go get a White Claw. It was time, like, I'm fucking done with this shit for the day. I'm gonna go home.
You know what? If she was serious
crack
about
a White
that,
Claw.
she had a choice of different counties that she could have signed herself to, and she didn't. She chose that one, and I feel like it was like a slap in the face. Like, yeah, I'm
I
not
think
taking
Did
she
you
your
say
lives
she
there.
lived
side.
out that way? Did you just say she lived out that way?
That's what I hear. Yeah, she lives out.
Yeah, I mean, she wants to work 5 minutes from home. You know what
I mean, for as
I-
early as she would end court, if that was really just for her, that was ridiculous, as opposed to like someone of
didn't.
the court staff that needed to be home for a kid, or if it was just her being like, I'm done for the day and I want to leave. What?
Yeah.
She
I
she
just want
called
my
it every
White
day at
Claw.
4:00.
She's shocking.
Right?
But
It
anyway,
was like,
there was actually some rules for the courts that I actually dug up there, and it turns out that if for example, like right now, I think it's Judge. Oh my God, his name slipped out of my mind. He's actually assigned to the case, and we're all like just hoping he stays signed to the case. But if something happens there, and he, for example, suddenly retires, rotates out, or whatever, she can actually take it up because she's familiar with the case. That's how it works in Massachusetts. If you're familiar with the case, you have a background with the case, you have knowledge with the case, then it's normal for the clerks to hand it over to that judge that has that background in the case. And I'm sitting here freaking the fuck out, going off my tree, and then the AI is going, you just need to calm down, Aussie. Like the AI is telling me, calm down. Like, okay, you're upset, but
That's
so
hysterical.
it's not a done deal, but she can't assign
It's
herself.
probably not a done deal that she can't, but I feel like
It would just be
the
so bad
appearance, it
not
would just
twice.
that they would never do that. But it's not, I mean, it is not outside the realm of possibilities, although I think it's very unlikely. But
I hope it is, and I'm still not completely convinced she isn't going to try. I feel like she's like, I feel like
I
she's
don't know.
dicking. I feel like she's dicking with us. Like she's
I
doing
don't
this
like.
on purpose.
I think she wants to get as far as she fucking can away from this case. Like, to be
Why though?
honest,
She got awards for this case. She got fucking awards for this.
she doesn't want, like, in my opinion, and I could be dead fucking wrong. Like, but I don't think
I
she
hope
wants to have
you're right,
anything
to
to
be
do
honest.
with it. Like, I don't think she's gonna try to get on that case, and I just like, but again, it's like you said you were checking for gull shit. The problem with the Richard Allen case is it wasn't streamed. People
That's
didn't get to see
exactly the
people
problem.
no,
didn't get to see the shit she was doing. The shit she was doing was she stripped that dude from being able to put any defense forward at all. They had to rely on reasonable doubt. And it was like decision after decision that she made was so egregious and
Hang on.
so bad.
Can you rewind?
Like,
Can you rewind? Because I thought that was the defense's job, just to relying on reasonable doubt. So just rewind and
no, I
fill that
mean,
in a little bit for me, because I'm a little blank there.
no, I mean, if you don't have an affirmative defense, or you can't come up with an alibi, or if you don't have an alternate theory, then you kind of have to rely on reasonable doubt. Like like, we don't have to prove a damn thing, but we know in reality, as defense attorneys, we never walked into a court of law thinking that we could just mail it in and that we had to put the entire burden on the state, because that's not how people think.
but even
People,
though it's the way it should work,
right?
I've always been a strong
It's how the
proponent
law
of
demands that
you
it works.
have
It's not
to
how it
give
really
the
works.
jury another storyline, another possibility, an alternate, even if it's not
Right.
necessarily like an
That's really what
alternate.
happened with the Reed case. They give them the other option, and they took it. Like that. I feel like,
Right. And they
yeah.
gave them the second time, they gave them a lot of different options, which is
Mm.
something that a lot of talking heads and people say, no, the defense can't just, throw everything in and be like, look, it's all reasonable doubt. And I've always kind of been a proponent of that. Like I like giving them, different options. You don't have to just give them, one story, because if your client didn't do it, how the flip are you supposed to know who did? You know, like it's not our job to figure out who did it. And not only that, we don't have the resources to figure out who did. We can come up with another theory, but why does it need to be one theory when we don't know, and it's not our job to know. It's
Right.
their job to know. The prosecution needs to know. This is what happened. We're telling you for a fact this is what happened. I mean, obviously sometimes they can say for a fact I know it was this person, but they could have done it in slightly different ways, or it could have happened in a slightly different manner. But you've got to have the full story and go forward. That's not the defense's job. But when we think of it as lawyers as resting solely on reasonable doubt, it's the concept of lawyers who would just poke holes in their theory and sit back and say that's reasonable doubt, as opposed to putting forth an actual defense that shows other possibilities, or really disproves something that they're trying to prove.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like they just hit the nail on the head by giving the jury the option of drink driving. as
I
far
mean,
as
that was really scary. I still haven't heard, and I don't know, maybe I haven't heard some other jurors have come out if that's what they were sitting there fighting about, because
in the
we
first
were on
trial.
if that's what the jurors were fighting about. What took so long was some people just did not want to even give that option. They wanted it to be all not guilty across the board.
Right.
Yeah, because we
Which
had
is
the
what we thought
glare
was going
on.
on back there.
We had Will on, and he was like, he's like, there's no fucking way. He's like, I wouldn't have, I couldn't have found her guilty. I wouldn't have done it just out of principle alone. I'm like, but dude, like
That's what
the
needs to
other
happen.
option is you have a hung.
Right.
You want to have her come back for a third trial because
Right.
because of the principle of the thing. I'm like, no, you hang your hat on that bullshit charge, and it becomes the most expensive DUI in the history of the country. It's like that fucking blows me. You know how much money they spent on those two cases, those two trials? It's like,
Yeah, we
if I
do.
were
It
a
was like
taxpayer in that fucking county,
it
I'd be like,
was
these fucking people, man.
what was it?
Like,
500 and some thousand just to Brennan, and
just
then
to Brennan.
400 or
Right.
500,000 just to
Millions and
Arca.
millions of dollars were spent on a DUI
I
case.
mean, Aperture, sorry.
Yeah, so it was 1 million just on Brennan and Aperture, like, and
Right.
then over and above that, we had Lally. The
Yeah, you got
first
tons
trial,
of
we had
stuff. Right.
Millions. The investigation,
Right.
all of it counts. The investigations, all that shit counts on the tally. They spent millions and millions on it. Millions and millions and millions on it. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
it's like that's what they get for overcharging.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, there was so much freaking shady business going on in the background with that thing, with that whole trial. Like the shady shit that the cops tried to pull in Karen Reid's trial was probably for me like the biggest eye opener, that they can actually do it and they can have immunity. That to me is probably the biggest jaw dropper out of the whole thing, that they can
And
do
then
that.
you see Brennan too, with no bones about lying to the jury, about making
Flat
up
out.
things, about letting his witness testify about no x-rays and holes in the shirts, and it was disgusting. It
Oh,
was
child.
disgusting, but it was finally people getting to see, wait a minute. Now I know why we need defense attorneys, because someone needs to be there to counter this bullshit. They can't
Right.
just have free reign to walk around telling people whatever they want, because sometimes they fucking lie.
Yeah, we're in the golden
Sorry
age
for my
of defense
language.
attorneys. Oh,
No,
and
let
hey,
fly.
Glenn Lake, man, you don't like, dude. I'm no Bev fan. I just don't give a fuck about her. Like, don't confuse me not giving a shit about
Right,
her.
he's not sure there's anything salacious
Like,
behind her
and to
shift,
be
but
honest, I just haven't put
maybe
any
there is.
thought into it because I don't give a fuck. I mean, Karen walked out of that courtroom. My actual opinion on the civil suits is that they're bullshit. And you better watch what you ask for in terms of civil suit, because discovery in civil cases is a whole different beast.
Oh
It's
yes,
like
I'm looking forward
her
to that.
lawyer, who is now Alan Jackson. They are going the discovery process in civil, where you get to depose people, you get to send out production requests asking for all this shit that they're going to try to get in order to prove that, because it's a much lower burden in civil. Like, I mean, they better be careful what they're asking
This
for
is
in
where
suing
shit
that
gets
case.
exciting, I think, because a lot of things we didn't get to hear in the Karen Reid trial, we're going to get to hear them not just in the civil suit, but also in the discovery process of Aiden's trial. Like a lot of this shit's going to come out and start connecting. I
Yeah.
think in a
Like
lot more
Aiden's
exciting way than
trial,
it did during the trial.
Aiden's trial's a thing. Like Aiden's trial,
I
in
think
terms of the law and its impact on us as citizens, is a much more important case, because it's got all the First Amendment issues that are, especially with journalists. It's an important case constitutionally speaking, in a much different way than Karen's was. Karen's was just your run of the mill, DUI. You know what I mean? And it turned into something else. But Aiden's is a whole thing where, what are we going to stand for as a proposition in terms of the First Amendment, and how much are we going to let the government interfere with it? Because, we'll see, man. It's like, but we're going to cover his case pretty heavily, because I think it's a really important case.
Yep.
For sure. I think we were covering it as well because there's a lot more to come out. And I think the civil case might actually fill in some of the gaps as well, depending on who gets deposed. The
Hey, Aussie, like I think Alan and Liza have entered their appearance for Karen and the civil. I'm pretty
Alan
sure.
Jackson and Liza.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yep.
Right. So I
Yep.
was just going to bring up Alan Jackson. Actually, there was a sticky situation where Bev tried to smear Alan Jackson's name, like as a lawyer. Ha- I don't really know how to ask the question, but what the fuck?
Yeah, we all
And
felt
how
the
do you
same
deal
way.
with that as a lawyer when a judge is
He-
going out on a
well,
limb like that to destroy you?
he's going to have to deal with it with the disciplinary committee. I mean, she said in open court she found that he lacked
No, but her
candor with the
question is,
court.
how do you, as a lawyer, deal with that when a judge goes on a mission to just slam you
You
and you're
don't.
powerless?
You're
It's like
powerless.
fighting against Yahoo. I mean,
There's
YouTube, like I was saying
there's
earlier. I had that situation happen to me in a federal trial, and she sent me for discipline. And I was asking, I actually went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I was like, well, what are you supposed to do when a judge is coming at you? You can't say anything back. You can't
Yep.
say, you know what? You can't say that to me. You can't do that. You shouldn't say, when the jury leaves, I can't tell her, you should not be talking like that about me in front of the jury. It's like the judge is the God, and we all have to bow down and can't say a word, no matter how outrageously wrong, how disrespectful they are.
How do you fight it though? Like, I mean,
You
obviously,
don't. You can't.
really, there's no repercussions at all. Like, you
I mean,
can't.
maybe you can make a complaint to the Judicial Oversight Committee, but I have
Yeah.
no idea how if they take that stuff seriously, if judges really get looked at. I mean, it's and worse than that, it was like, okay, if that's the way she was going to be with Alan, then she needed to be that way with the
Hank.
prosecution. She
Yeah.
just let Hank do whatever he wants, flagrant misconduct, and not a hint of a concern, not
Right.
the slightest concern. And that should be even a bigger issue to a judicial oversight committee than the fact that she, took this firm position with Alan Jackson, but then you didn't do it when the other side did. And Bob and I, we had that similar issue with the judge who screamed and yelled at us in court and said, if we're going to try and do this, and if we can't do it, prove to him he's going to report us. And then at the end, in front of course, an empty courtroom, when we won the trial, the judge said that what a benefit we are to the defense bar, that more
God.
lawyers should be like us. He didn't outright apologize, but he could have apologized. It was, better than an apology, but when you try to get a judge removed for something like that, like, no, that's a clear bias against the lawyer. And that kind of bias, the judge has that kind of bias against the lawyer. It feeds over to the defendant. It bleeds into what the jury sees. The judge should be removed, and they won't even remove a judge for something like that. It's
hard.
Awful.
You're
And
powerless sometimes.
I actually don't mind Alan Jackson's comebacks at the moment, like requesting for Deborah to be listed on the Brady list and some of the follow-up that he's doing with that, because he really has no choice but to follow up, you know what I mean? Because she left it hanging like that. He has no choice but to follow up on some of this stuff, right?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Higgins should be on there, or not Higgins, whichever guy put in the inverted video and said, yes, that's a fair representation of what things look like.
Yeah.
Am I like you guys? Am I crazy, or did Alan Jackson and Liza enter their appearance in the civil case? Have you heard that, or am I like out of my fucking mind?
I've heard nothing. So,
did you hear that, Aussie? Like, this is like 2 weeks ago.
I actually heard that 2 people did join from their firms, but not them.
Okay, so it's his firm,
not them specifically. But I thought maybe you heard something.
Bob's retracting it.
No, I don't want to be breaking any news that's not right. So I could have sworn I saw it, but again, I cover a lot of shit. So don't take my word for it. I thought I saw that,
Bob's retracting it. Strike it from the record.
I retract it if it can't be confirmed, because I'm
trying to find the
Googling it now and I'm like, seems like if it would have happened, I would have found a story about it, and I'm not seeing shit. So
Yeah, I've got the article. I'm just trying to find it. Who it was that was added to the team, and I think it was maybe one or two from his firm, perhaps. Let me just check it.
maybe that's what I saw.
Karen Reed. Speaking of which, we can probably talk about this one while I'm finding it. I'll name who the lawyers are, but we can talk about. Let me get this on the screen because this is big news.
I
Rachel.
think Olivia joined Turtle Boy's team.
Yes, I had
Yeah.
that too.
I saw that, but she's not a lawyer. Olivia, she's a Twitter account.
Rachel Worlands said, let me share that. We got it. Yep. Rachel Worlands said that law enforcement officers and others involved in the case could still face criminal charges, state or federal administrative investigations and proceedings, and other career-altering or ending determinations from regulators. Is she giving us a heads up here?
I mean, I didn't even see this. When did this come out?
This is the Vanity Fair article.
Huh.
When did this come out? This came out 23rd, so a couple of days ago, 3 days ago.
I haven't even read it yet.
Yeah, me neither.
Brennan's Cost and Degina Perkins is
I mean, it's
running against
definitely
Morrissey.
possible that people are. I mean, there's a lot of shit that should be looked into. I mean, I still do not have an answer on the inverted video. I still do not. That kind of bullshit that Brennan was saying. Oh, we have this other one that was inverted before. You have not proved that to me, sir. I don't believe a word you say, and that what you did in that courtroom was not proof that there were a whole issue with the things. Maybe there was, maybe there is, but what you have presented thus far does not explain that. Maybe there's more out there that we didn't see, but I'm sure as shit not believing it just because he said it.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck what Hank Brennan says. Like, that dude never had any kind of backing. He had never had receipts for anything. He would just say shit.
No, exactly.
Like all the time. You know, it was super annoying. All right, Aussie, we got to go. Like, I'm sorry to cut it, but like I'm trying to catch a movie tonight with my date, my girl.
That's so nice. You guys are lovely. Thank you so much for joining us, and it's been an
our
awesome
pleasure
conversation.
Yes, it has been.
We covered all my points, so we're done.
Yeah, we loved it. It was awesome.
When you were saying what you hate about streaming, this is the bit that I hate. I never know how to wrap it up. So how about you take it away and wrap it up for us?
All right. So here's what we'd like you guys to do. First of all, go over to our channel, sub. It's Defense Diaries Podcast. We have some pretty good content over there. We have a lot of guests on, talk a lot of law nerd shit. We stream trials. And we love our community over there. We built a really, really great community. And listen to the podcast, Defense Diaries Podcast. Gacy's unbelievable. If you know nothing about it, if you're from the other side of the pond or, you know, down under, it's a terrifying case, but it's a fascinating case. And we took a very different look at it. And I think it's probably worth your time. And, you know, just check it out. And, my wife's awesome. I love my wife. That's all I can tell you. That's how I'm gonna end it.
We love your wife too.
Thanks for having us, Aussie. We appreciate it.
Aussie. You're great. And we want you to keep making mashups because they're the best.
Right. And everybody, don't forget to subscribe and like Aussie's feed here because it gets it in the algorithm.
Yeah. And if you're on replay crew of this, make sure you're leaving a comment because that helps get it in the algo. Let's get our girl, because you just broke 20,000. Congrats on that, by the way.
Congrats.
It's amazing. Beautiful.
Thanks to everyone's help, by the way. Clara, Melanie, all the shout outs that I got along the way. So I appreciate the help. So
well deserved.
All right. That's it from us, guys. Bye.
Bye.